What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the 40K Cafe, and thank you, Lopez Ashton, for the request. How different do I think things would have gone if Magnus didn't do everything wrong? If absolutely nothing else changed regarding the story and everything else proceeded exactly, I think that the Loyalists would have won by a landslide. For starters, the Webway project would still be around. The destruction of the Webway was more catastrophic than some people really give credit for. The Emperor's 10,000 custodies were reduced to just a few thousand. The custodies were down in the Imperial dungeon fending off a chaos incursion for days and days on end, fighting back an insurmountable force of demonic entities while taking excruciating losses at the same time. If Magnus didn't break the Webway project, the custodies would not have had to fight in the Imperial dungeon and would have stood at their full might at the time of the Siege of Terra. Additionally, the Emperor would not have had to stay on the Golden Throne for all this time. The Emperor had to stay on the Golden Throne for much of this time in order to stave off the other demonic incursions that wanted to make their way on Terra. So if Magnus didn't break the Webway, I don't think that Malcador would have had to take the Emperor's seat on the Golden Throne at some point and then get turned into dust. But what about the grander scheme of things? If Magnus went ahead and just traveled back to Terra to warn his father, I believe his father would have taken his personal claim into account. The Loyalists wouldn't have lost 1,000 sons, and they would have been there at the Siege of Terra. All of the Imperium's most potent psychers would have been in a single location at the Siege of Terra, and at the height of their power without being encumbered by any other forces. Magnus would have remained at the height of his power instead of being shattered like he was on Prospero. And so this would have resulted in not only having the Emperor of Mankind, Malcador the Sigillite, but now also Magnus the Red on one side. With these three psychers together, I have no doubt the Loyalists would have done a crippling blow to the traitors. Not to mention, since the wolves wouldn't have needed to be released onto Prospero, the loyal Sons of Rust would have remained by the Emperor's side as well, and they would have stood at the height of their power. As we know it, the Space Wolves during the burning of Prospero took a devastating blow. Even outgunned, outmanned, and feeling heavy resistance from their Primarch, the Thousand Sons were still able to deal an excessive amount of damage to a full legion of Space Wolves. So if Magnus hadn't done what he did, the Space Wolves wouldn't have needed to go to Prospero, and they would have stayed by Terra. Or even if they didn't stay on Terra, it still would have been a fully functioning legion. I think the tide of battle would be far too extreme for the traitors to do absolutely anything. Magnus is just that powerful and was a key component for the domino effect that was to come afterwards. But if we are to take any certain events that had occurred in the books, from what we know, for every piece gained, another piece would be lost. If Magnus had stayed a loyalist, who knows if perhaps Jagatai Khan would have turned traitor, or for that even any other loyalist Primarch. But that can be a topic for another day. So to sum things up, if Magnus did not break the Webway project and adhered to what the Emperor had said, I think much of the catastrophe that happened at the Siege of Terra would not have occurred the way that it did. Instead, I think the Loyalists would have been way more victorious without as much of a heavy loss. So with that being said, thanks again Lopez for the request. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Drop a comment if there's anything you want to hear about next, and as always, remember to follow for more.